Shoot it. Good. Get off. Let's go, offense. Let's go.
A welcome sight for all football fans, Ravens fans. It is M&T Bank Stadium hosting Training Camp Live, presented by Xfinity on this gorgeous, hot and humid Sunday. We're going to be with you for the next 30 to maybe 45 minutes here, taking you through the first stadium practice of this training camp 2020. As you can see, mostly coaches, but players now in full pads. Robert Griffin III making their way back out onto this field. Last time they were here, ugly memories and a loss to the Tennessee Titans, but it's a new year, and James Prochet, once again, one of the early faces out on the field, getting his first taste of the Banks grass. Evan Washburn once again up here in the network booth. Roomy, but Ryan Mink just down the hall a little bit. Man, we've talked about how exciting this training camp's been for all the obvious reasons. Just the desperation to have football, and Ryan, to be back in this stadium adds to that in a big way.
Absolutely. It's so nice to be back. There's no place like home, right? And it just makes it feel more real. We're only 3 weeks away, Evan. 3 weeks away from a real game in this stadium. It's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. Well, there is news to get to here out of the gate in regards to Earl Thomas. The team, about 12:30 Eastern, sending out this notice. We have terminated safety Earl Thomas's contract for personal conduct that has adversely affected the Baltimore Ravens. So, Ryan, we'll turn our attention to what this means to the players and this team as they get ready for this season, and specifically that safety group. Next man up will be tested here. Chuck Clark, the established player there that will continue to lead that back end, but there's some players behind him that now get thrust into the spotlight, and nobody bigger than Deshaun Elliott, the second-year safety, who, when healthy, has shown flashes, but staying healthy has been a challenge.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot to be excited about Deshaun Elliott. I mean, here's a 6th-round pick from a couple years ago coming out of Texas who was a big-time playmaker. His junior year at Texas had 6 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, 9 passes deflected, and by the way, he returned 2 of those interceptions for touchdowns. So we're talking about a playmaker that should not have been a 6th-round pick out of Texas. So Deshaun Elliott, like you mentioned, the big thing for him is just staying healthy. Both of his first 2 seasons wiped out with season-ending injuries. He fractured his forearm in the preseason as a rookie. Then last year, right when it looked like he was going to get his first chance to really make an impact on this defense after Tony Jefferson went down, well, then Deshaun suffered a knee injury in the very next game. So he's just been snake bitten. I don't think it's anything about him, just bad luck, But if he can stay healthy, I think the Ravens have a very exciting player here.
Should mention Anthony Levine, too, as well, known for his special teams play, but he's just such a jack of all trades that they could utilize him. Continuing with some of the news to come out of the last few days around this team, Lamar Jackson, we didn't see him on the field, and then Antoine Wesley also a piece of news here when it comes to being placed on injured reserve. Not necessarily somebody we had penciled in as somebody to be an impact player as a wide receiver, but this still is a hit to that special teams, Ryan.
Well, and it's the second injury at wide receiver now because Chris Moore broke a finger, so he's sidelined for what looks like probably a few weeks. So, the back end of the wide receiver room has taken a couple of hits now. Antoine Wesley, I really liked him last year in training camp and in the preseason. Guy that can go up and get the ball in some go routes. So I feel for him, and I think he had really bonded with some of these other younger wide receivers. You saw him all over social media and all those workouts, slip and slides, all that stuff. So, I feel for Antoine, but, he had I would say a tough, it was an uphill battle to make this roster. So you look at it, and I don't think it affects really the competition for those primary spots at wide receiver.
And it just continues to thrust Duvernay and Prochet and obviously Miles Boykin and Willie Snead, the established vet there. Their value just increases tenfold as you look at Duvernay. Again, it's so cool for these rookies to come out on this field. No fans in the stands, and obviously it's just a practice here in the heart of August. But this is their first taste of an NFL stadium, and you can see the smiles on J.K. Dobbins' face. And here's a tweet from James Prochet. Damn, I love this game. Thank God enough for the life to live or the life I live. And look, this is every kid's dream as they grow up playing this game, the chance to play in an NFL stadium. And as you mentioned, week 1's right around the corner. I did mention briefly there, Lamar Jackson was not at practice on Saturday, but as we expected, no big news there, just getting a day off despite the fact he's young, only in year 3. He's throwing a lot of football, so they just want to keep that high-prized arm in good shape.
Definitely. Yeah, I think this is a really important day, not only just for the whole team and breaking up the monotony of training camp, but specifically for those rookies that you were talking about. I mean, let's not forget, we're not going to have a preseason this year. So those rookies, you don't want the first time that they step on this field to be week 1 against the Cleveland Browns. So get them in the stadium. You know, it's because we're not going to have a packed stadium anyway during the regular season. It might not be all that different. So get them in here, get them a little bit acclimated, just to get the feel of it, you know. And so I think that's a really good thing for these rookies who have looked very good in training camp so far, and I expect they're going to have a definite role in this team come week 1.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ryan. A couple things for the fans watching at home that'll make this show a little bit different, as is the case when we're on camera or going to video or graphic, is because they're in some sort of install period, and we expect there to be a longer period today for special teams due to the fact that they're in the stadium. But the other layer, just to give you a sense of how this is all a bit different in 2020, and you can hear the music playing in the background, that's customary at practice as Willie Snead enjoys his return to the bank. But also, they're going to be piping in some of the, we're calling it artificial crowd noise, but it is utilizing the noise that you, the fans, have brought so many years, and you might hear some of that to give the players a sense of what it's going to be like come week 1. So there's a lot to this practice beyond just the play on the field, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be an adjustment, right? I mean, these players, it's going to be weird without M&T Bank Stadium rocking, and it's disappointing, obviously. I mean, you know, I really am bummed about that Monday Night Football game against the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, this place would have been rocking. So it's a big bummer, but the players are going to have to get used to it. You know, some of them, we've talked to them this offseason about what they expect it to feel like, and they say, yeah, you hear the fans, and they can certainly get you going, but you're so locked in on the game and personally driven and all those things. I don't expect it to affect, you know, the level of play or anything like that. I just think that the emotions, the emotional roller coasters sometimes, and the highs that you can feed off of from the crowd, that'll be different this year.
No doubt, but we all have to adapt, and that's what we're doing. A fun look back here for what we saw yesterday at practice. It's a daily routine. They're the top plays presented by Oakley. We mentioned Lamar Jackson getting a rest day, so RG3 getting a chance to display his talents, having, as been described by John Harbaugh, one of the best camps he's had since being a Raven here, and that pass deflected by Pernell McPhee. It was a full padded workout as the Heat's picked up here. Willie Snead continuing to make big plays down the field. LJ Ford, it looks like, getting his hand in there. And then Trace McSorley, Ryan, he had a pretty good day with, again, increased reps.
Well, you got to wait for his highlight. His highlight of the day is coming here. There it is. There it is. Oh, he was fired up. See, yesterday I thought the defense won the day yesterday. But then you had a couple plays, you know, particularly there's a goal line drill early on in practice where the defense really kind of dominated, and you saw Malik Harrison. But then McSorley and then Tyler Huntley, the other backup quarterback competing for a roster spot, both in when they ran it back on goal line drills, both scored touchdowns on keepers. So they were pretty fired up about that. The offense to get kind of the final word.
And we should say it is Trace McSorley's birthday. I don't have his age in front of me, but still a very young man.
A lot younger than us, Evan.
He's younger than us.
A lot younger than us.
And still celebrating a birthday. And no better way to do that than to get back out onto the stadium grass here for what should be a fun Sunday of football. And Trace McSorley, along with, as you mentioned, Huntley and RG3, a discussion point for James Urban as he spoke to the media, the quarterback's coach here of the Ravens. And look, all the questions, or majority of them, were focused on Lamar Jackson entering year 3. But he had some nice things to say about what McSorley and RG3 and Huntley have been able to do in what's been a unique offseason, with just the majority of the work being done virtually.
Yeah, I think the Ravens have an interesting competition for that third quarterback spot. You know, Trace McSorley played really well in the preseason last year and he got more run time really because RG3 suffered a hand injury last preseason. So, he played well, but he didn't really get to establish himself on special teams, which when the Ravens drafted McSorley, they thought that he'd probably have a role in that. So now he's got to come out and he's got to prove it. And it's for guys like him and for Tyler Huntley where when you don't have a preseason, it really hurts those guys, right? Because Lamar Jackson, okay, he gets a couple series, whatnot. Same with RG3, he gets a couple. But then Trace McSorley would have been playing a lot of preseason time. Same with Tyler Huntley. So you feel for them. So they've really got to prove it in practice. And I think that they've been coming on. Yesterday was a chance. They got more reps with Lamar on the sideline. And I thought they both had a good practice.
Top plays are a routine every day here on Training Camp Live presented by Xfinity. But we always look forward to our Wired segments. For my money, Calais Campbell's been the early winner, but Mark Ingram, he was wearing a wire on Saturday, and he's going to bring it.
You know what time it is. Another day, another dollar. Know we gonna make them holler. Pads do feel extra large today. Pad level and execution, baby. Let's get it. That's touchdown. That's definitely 6, though. Mine.
I would say it's questionable.
Well, nobody wrapped my hips or legs up. Humid out here today. But sweating so much out here today. Dog days, my dog. Hey, this is how you win, though. Hell yeah, bubbles coming on my cleats. Bruh, it's humid. It's sweating like a mug out here.
180.
Oh, that's out of there! Gusto! Let's go, O. Let's go, O. Everybody do their job now. My goodness. That's on point right there. Hey, O, let's get right. Let's get right. It's 4th and 1. Live. Yo, that's out of there! That's out of there! That's out of there! No! And that's 6-2! And that's 6-2! Hey, T-Mac, what it do? Hey, T-Mac, what it do? Wow! Yes, sir! Ooh. Boy, slid on him. My dog ran that thing like it was the 200 meters. Lengthened that curve. Came out the straight stepping. Came out the straight stepping. What you call that? Gleefully stepping? Gleefully stepping, huh? Gleefully.
What up, though? Everybody be safe. Everybody be healthy. We love you.
Ryan, not that he needs the extra work or probably the extra coin, but I think anybody should just hire Mark Ingram to have them around to just boost them around, man. He just brings the energy. Obviously, he can still bring the production due as a player. And, man, if we could have Mark Ingram wired weekly, we'd all be winning. Should be noted here as we continue to see guys getting loose as they get prepared for this stadium practice. This is a social show. We want to hear from you. So head to Facebook, engage in the comment section with your questions, and we'll try to sprinkle those in over the course of the back end of this show. And it should be noted, too, Ryan Mink, it's not just you and I today. We've got a special guest. Garrett Downing is going to join us semi-field level from the, I don't know, I guess you call it that beer garden or that social tent there that during the normal season gets rocking.
Right now, it's the Garrett Downing sauna. He's cooking down there. We're going to see Garrett getting his sweat on down on the field. I'm feeling nice up here.
No, it's I've got this whole network booth to myself. I'm usually down there sweating like Garrett is, but I'll take this for today.
Yeah. You know what's funny about Mark Ingram, I mean, just to take it back to him, I mean, this guy, you look at it, and he's 30 years old now, and you have questions about, okay, when is he gonna go off that cliff? And I thought running backs coach Matt Weiss had some great comments.
He was phenomenal at the podium.
Phenomenal yesterday, and made a really good case for why he doesn't believe that Mark Ingram is going to go downhill and why he actually says he's an ascending player. And that's because you look at what Mark Ingram does best, right? He's not a speedster. That's not his game. Justice Hill can do that. He can run the 40, right? J.K. Dobbins, he can do that. Mark Ingram has great vision, great contact balance, great strength. Those things don't go away with another year of age. I mean, what they say, old man strength, right? He's got that old man strength. So I think that that's a really good point by Matt Weiss. Those are skills that don't diminish necessarily. I still expect him to be the lead dog in this running back core. I still expect him to be right there around 1,000 rushing yards, be a player in the receiving game, all those things. He doesn't look at all different from the Mark Ingram that I saw last year.
And it should be noted, too, as much as the discussion point about running backs is that they fall off a cliff after a few years, there are examples, and Mark is now trickling towards this group as well. Frank Gore in year 15, still productive. Adrian Peterson around the Beltway, also still productive. And he has the benefit of some help around him as we take a big picture view of this running back group where they can all be fresh when they take the field. J.K. Dobbins is the rookie, much discussed. Gus Edwards, the proven number 2 or change of pace back. Matt Weiss saying that there's been growth there from Gus Edwards as a pass catcher. But the versatility, dimension, and diversity of this group, along with Justice Hill, is what makes them so effective and so exciting ahead of 2020. Here's our first Facebook comment from Dustin. Would love to see Mark Ingram retire a Raven. This dude is pure gold for this team. And I don't think you're going to find many arguments in this building about that, because Mark Ingram has really come in, despite having started his career other places, felt like he's been here forever.
Well, I mean, how many years was he in New Orleans with Alvin Kamara? I want to say there's 2 years. They had 2 years together? At
least 2. It might have been 3, because Kamara's entering final year of his rookie deal. So, it was at least 2.
Yeah, I mean, and those two were just a fantastic 1-2 punch. Why can't he and J.K. Dobbins be the same? Everybody's in a rush when you draft a player like J.K. Dobbins, and I get it. He's really talented. He's coming off a 2,000-yard rushing season at Ohio State, and everybody's like, all right, well, he's going to take Mark's spot. He's going to replace him as the starter, and maybe he will someday, but we don't have to make that day tomorrow. Right? I mean, these two can be a great 1-2 punch this year. Heck, they could be a great 1-2 punch next year. And so I think that there's no problem with having too much talent at running back, especially when you're a team like the Ravens who runs the ball more than anybody and it's not even close.
For sure. It should be noted, I'm not sure how much of this is coming through to the fans at home, but do want to keep you updated. We are getting our first taste here as they're testing some of the artificial crowd noise, or piping it in here. So the players, as they start their dynamic warm-up here, they get a sense of what it could feel like on a Sunday in Week 1 against the Browns when there is artificial crowd noise being piped in. This is something that's part of the new normal in 2020 in all professional sports, whether it be the NBA and obviously NHL and Major League Baseball, finding a way to make sure that the in-stadium environment for the athletes is something that they can at least hope to resemble what they expect.
This is like a stadium murmur.
It's
not cheering. We got to get Jay O'Brien. Get our producer Jay O'Brien on the mic here.
Well, here we go. The music is coming in too.
I want to know how many buttons he has. Like, how many different options for crowd noise do we have here? Can we get a Derek Wolf howl?
Yeah, that or what's your best friend that you holiday with that likes to take his shirt off and spin it around?
Oh, it's Real Fan Dan.
Yeah, he should have his own special button. I mean, like each stadium should achieve all of the traditions that we've come to know.
Look, if we can't have Real Fan Dan here and we need somebody to take their shirt off, I'll give the people what they want. I'll give it to them. All right, if it comes to that, just pan to the press box. I'll be in my spot, and I'll take it off for them.
This is a family show, Ryan. Let's keep it PG here on a Sunday morning. As you see, Marquise Hollywood Brown, just the talk of the early portion of camp here. Excited to be back out on this stadium grass. And I should say, I mean, not that it's a shocker with the way that this grounds crew gets work done, but man, the turf looks phenomenal right now. It really does. And these guys are probably excited for the chance to open it up on it.
Yeah, it really does. I think Hollywood, it's another test for that foot. How's it feel? How's it feel on this grass? Hollywood last year, when you watched him play, he went out of his way to avoid contact, and he said that was part by necessity and part because he just couldn't make the moves that he wanted to make. But I'm excited to see him out on this turf and see him stick that foot in the grass, not only get up the field speed-wise, but just some juke moves because he's got him in there. So I'm excited to see a little bit of that.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch how over the course of the season they employ Marquise in different ways other than just streaking downfield, because if he's able to take on more contact, it allows him to do a little bit more. Hey, our first shot at Justin Tucker on Training Camp Live presented by Xfinity, doing his best work catching Sam Cook punts.
This
and
will
you
be
heard
a big
the
day
horn
for
there
him.
briefly, Ryan. That means we are headed to maybe a special team period with Justin Tucker. So we'll take a brief timeout and be back after this.
Feel like you've watched all the things? Now there's more to love with Xfinity X1, the ultimate entertainment experience. Like live sports, they're back with the best way to watch. And more streaming apps all in one place. More classics, more premieres, plus more to easily find using just your voice. Hello, more. Where have you been all my life?
Get this offer now with DVR service included for a year. Plus, get speed, coverage, and security with the XFi Gateway. Click, call, or visit a store today.
If the last few months have taught us anything, it's that we really, really miss football. It's coming, and Ravens scratch-offs from the Maryland Lottery are already here. Play now for a chance to win up to $100,000 or second chance cash and Ravens prizes like seats for 20 years. Please play safely and responsibly.
This right here is the papadilla, which, if I'm not mistaken, is Latin for better than a sandwich. Even has a better pickle. Papadilla for just $6. Better ingredients, better pizza, better than a sandwich. Papa John's.
Get a papadilla at papajohns.com for just $6. Papa John's, official pizza of the Baltimore Ravens. So as we mentioned, after that initial period, just stretching, getting warmed up, the team has moved into an install period, so we cannot show you that. It's a good chance, though, to look back at how they built out this 2020 draft class, going back to the combine. This is inside access into the interview process.
NFL world has descended upon Indianapolis.
Queen and Murray, I don't think both of them will be there. I won't be surprised if either of them will be there just because they're so dynamic.
We've never drafted a guy from LSU in Baltimore.
Here's an interception on first down and 10 by Patrick Queen.
Why should you be the first guy?
I bring what I need to the team as great physical linebacker, vocal leader. I feel like that I can help y'all bring some championships back, being in the atmosphere, winning championships a lot, come in and help y'all get to succeed what y'all want to.
This guy plays like a Raven. He's a guy who then can get off the spot and he is flying. I think this is a great pickup.
And give us your three best games this year.
Clemson, Michigan, and Wisconsin for the first time.
The Baltimore Ravens got in the weight room this past weekend and got better and stronger.
How about your worst game?
Penn State.
Why?
I fumbled the ball.
That rare for you?
Pretty rare for me.
You had a little bit more carries this year, right?
Yes, sir.
Shared the load a little bit last year?
Yes, sir.
How was that for you?
Last year we were going every other series, and sometimes, I would press because, I would get one carry here, and then, maybe the next drive I didn't get a carry at all, so I didn't know, I kind of felt like I needed to make a play for myself, which was the wrong thing to do, and I learned from it. And so, yeah, that was tough for me to adjust to. But the year before, I split carries with Mike Weber, and we did it a little different. It was whoever had the hot hand, and I actually liked it. It was great for me.
D-line coach Elijah, if I called him as a football player, what would you say about him?
He would say high energy, a good kid, caring, loves the game, obviously physically gifted and likes to work. Just a good teammate, a great teammate.
How would he describe it, like constructive criticism, getting after you, coaches getting after you?
Yeah, he would say for me to not relax so much on my talent. You need to keep working. You can't get complacent.
Why should we draft you? Why should we draft you?
Yeah, no doubt I believe that I'm a good player. I definitely have things I need to fix on my game, but I'm a player who's willing to work hard and a player who's willing to make the sacrifices to be the best football player and teammate that I can be.
Great insight into the process of how they build out a draft class each year. Evan Washburn, that's Ryan Mink. We're both upstairs here in our respective booths. But, hey, how about a little unscripted reunion here, Ryan Mink? And we bring in our friend, Garrett Downing, who's field level. He's been field level all of training camp. Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be here. I tell you what, it's hot down here. You know, that's one thing. You probably see the sweat starting to pour off me a little bit. And that's actually a good test for these guys to come out here and get in the stadium environment. It's definitely hotter on field level than it would be out in Owings Mills. So that's a good opportunity for this team to feel like what it's going to be like at 1 o'clock on Sunday for some of those early September games.
No doubt. It's at least 10, 15 degrees hotter field level over the course of that early portion of the season. And I mentioned it, Garrett. I mean, you've been in a different tier as we've come to describe them here over the course of training camp. So let's get your impressions as they're still in the install period. So it's going to be a lot of us on camera. Get used to this, at least for the next couple minutes. Garrett, your sort of top line thoughts over the course of the first 5-6 days of camp.
Yeah, I think coming into training camp, I was really curious to see how the passing game would look. Lamar Jackson had talked about the passing game, how he wants to take another step in that area, kind of add that deep downfield passing game and some of those sideline throws to the equation. And that's something that takes time, it takes chemistry, and you have to do it with reps. And the Ravens obviously didn't have any of that. No team did during the offseason because of COVID. So I was really curious coming into training camp how that passing game will look, and I've been impressed. I think that the passing game in my mind is actually a little further along than I expected. And I think that speaks to Lamar's work in the offseason, and then also the progression and development of these young wide receivers. I mean, Hollywood Brown, I know you guys were talking about him. He certainly looks like he is ready to take a big step forward. The foot injury seems like in ancient history. He's moving so much better than he was as a rookie. And then Miles Boykin has been impressive to me. You know, he's somebody that he recognizes that this is a big opportunity for him and he needs to take a step forward. And I think he has done that early in camp. So I've been impressed with where the passing game is right now.
And Ryan, we've spent a lot of time talking about the additions of Calais Campbell, Derek Wolfe, what that means for Brandon Williams, what it means for the whole defense. But you've also been struck by some of the young pass rushers, and maybe not a young guy, but a guy still in his rookie deal. Tyus Bowser's jumped off to you.
Yeah, Tyus Bowser last year had 5 sacks, and it was kind of, I would call it a semi-breakout year for him. You know, he really kind of established himself as a former second-round pick. You know, now what I see from him is just improved play strength. The bull rush, I mean, he's knocking some people back off that edge. Because I usually think, when I think of Tyus, I think speed. You know, speed, give him a little move. He's explosive off the edge for a smaller built guy. But now he adds some power to his game that not only makes him just a better pass rusher, but also just expands his game all around. Run defense, all those things. So I think Tyus Bowser, he talked to us this offseason about wanting to be a double-digit sack guy. I don't think it's out of the question.
Wow. Hey, Garrett, we heard from the coaches over the course of the first few days, especially the assistants yesterday, about how despite such a long ramp-up period and not so much time, really any, on the field, they feel like they've been able to hit the ground running. As a guy who's been closer to the action maybe than us, what have you noticed in terms of execution, intensity, and the fact that it's such a condensed period, but it feels like they're able to almost get going here out of the gate?
One thing that I've noticed along those lines, Evan, is that the intensity of practice seems like it hasn't missed a beat. I was a little curious about that coming into camp because typically you have the energy of a crowd. I mean, that's one thing about training camp is that you have fans there, and there's no question about it. Players feed off the energy from the fans. That's why there's crowd noise being pumped into the stadium right now and music, because that adds an element of energy. And I was wondering if that would be lacking at all going out there to practice and not having any fans, or coming here into this big stadium and having it be empty. And there's still energy. Like, as guys are walking out of the locker room onto the field, there was lots of hooting and hollering and excitement about taking the field. So I think I've been really encouraged by that fact. And then the other thing, too, Ryan, I just want to go back to Tyus Bowser. You were talking about him, and I know you and I have talked about Tyus a little bit. Who's to say he couldn't go and be what some of these other defensive players have been for the Ravens, who have had a big season in a contract year, a guy like a Zadarius Smith, who plays their best football in that contract year and then goes out and gets paid by another team, or it could be by the Ravens. But I would not rule that out either. Like, if he's a 8 to say he gets 8 to 10 sacks, there's going to be a team that would be interested in paying him a lot of money. And he's just been somebody that's quietly gotten better every step of the way. And I feel like he could be that kind of that next somewhat breakout defender who has a really strong season in his final year of his rookie contract.
That's a great point. And guys, now that we're able to return to showing at least some of the individual periods here on one half of the field, the offensive line, and Ryan and I have discussed it a lot, Garrett, and I'll let Ryan kick us off here. But again, as this continues to be a discussion point, right guard, Fluker, Ben Powers, that group, as they put some work in here, let's hear from both of you on just general consensus on the offensive line ahead of 2020.
You know, I think the offensive line has a great chance to still remain at its high level. And I know that sounds crazy because you have Marciano, a future Hall of Famer in my mind, who just stepped away. But DJ Fluker's been a really good addition. You have young players in Ronnie Stanley, Bradley Bozeman, you know, even at center, Matt Skura or Patrick McCary, and Orlando Brown at right tackle. That's a young 4 players right there that I think are still improving. So, you know, I think this group, it needs to get its chemistry together because Yanda's not out there. But DJ Fluker has fit in really well here, both from a playing standpoint, physicality standpoint, and just a personality standpoint. I think players really like him, and he's gelling well. So this offensive line is really the engine that kind of drives this offense. You can't do all this stuff, this read option, all those things. You know, you can't do it as efficiently without that offensive line and run the ball as much as the Ravens do. So they need to have a good season. They need to make up for the loss of Yanda for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. And I think it's becoming clear to me that Fluker's going to be the starting right guard. I mean, that would be my expectation. You know, he's played well from what we've seen. And I think the other point that is worth mentioning is that the offensive line coach, Coach Joe D'Alessandris, he's riding these guys. I mean, that's one thing, and I'm out here and I'm watching practice, and I'm kind of getting up close to some of these offensive line drills at times. He is constantly coaching, constantly working these guys, and he's riding them. Like, he's pushing a guy like DJ Fluker, who he actually has a relationship, who he coached previously in his career. So he knew him already coming in here. I think that gives them good familiarity with each other. But I got a lot of faith in Joe D. He's developed some good young linemen. I mean, look at a guy like Orlando Brown, who is a third-round pick and is a Pro Bowler the next season. I think Coach Joe D deserves credit for the way that he's helped develop some of these young linemen. And you can just tell out here at practice, he's one of the most vocal. He's somebody who's always active, and I think that that's going to go a long way for this offensive line.
It's a great point. I think we probably don't spend enough time talking about how some of these position coaches under John Harbaugh really provide so much stability, whether it's Joe D, Joe Cullen, you mentioned James Urban with the quarterbacks. But flipping the side of the ball, Matthew Judon, who has that impactful season a year ago that leads to a franchise tag. Obviously, I'm sure he and the team will love to try and figure out a way to keep him here long term, but at least for right now, that's the case. And the way he's embraced that, guys, to me, speaks a lot about his character and what he wants to do within not just this season, but seasons to come. And what Calais and Derek Wolfe and the additions to that line can do for him are what in your mind, Mink?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely opens him up for more one-on-one opportunities. There's no doubt about it. Last year, he was the featured pass rusher, and everybody knew it. Everybody on the offense knew it, too, after the departure of Terrell Suggs. And he handled that well. You know, he had more weight. Look at that fancy footwork on Marlon Humphrey.
Is he dancing or putting work in?
Look at that. You know, Judon handled that really well. There were heightened expectations, and he knew that, and he bet on himself. And he said, you know what? I'm not going to sign a contract early. I'm going to bet on myself and see what I can do and see what money I can make after this final year of my rookie deal. And heck, he got franchised, so it worked out for him. And I agree with you. He's come in with a great attitude, despite not getting that long-term deal that I'm sure he would have liked. I haven't sensed any issue with that with Judon. Still high energy, loving life, you know, talking, laughing, joking with his teammates, working hard. He's the same guy as last year, but I think he has a better cast around him and can do even more.
Great image of the future of this defense. Well, Garrett, stick with us. We're going to take a break here, get a towel, get some water, and when we come back, we'll take some fan questions and show more individual drills.
Wawa hoagies are a winning pick for game day. Every hoagie's made with the ingredients you crave in varieties you love. From toasty cheesesteak to mouthwatering meatball, Italian, and more, there's a hoagie for every mood and every appetite. Stop in, order ahead with the Wawa mobile app, or get it delivered. When you're planning for the game, we have you covered with Wawa Catering. Make your game day a winner with Wawa Hoagies, snacks, and drinks. Wawa is the official hoagie of the Baltimore Ravens. Gotta have a Wawa.
You can see it in the eyes of every Ravens fan. An unwavering commitment to the team they love. A pride so vibrant, it can be seen from miles away. A community that's fully committed to their team and shows up week after week to help chase a championship. To the Ravens flock, to Chet starters, to those who bleed purple, M&T Bank wants to say, we're your biggest fan.
No, this ain't no sandwich. Because on a sandwich, they ask you if you want cheese. But on a papadilla, cheese is what's holding the whole operation together. Get one now for just $6. Better ingredients, better pizza, better than a sandwich. Papa John's.
Ravens flock, here's your chance to play GM. Enter the You Pick the Team presented by MedStar Health contest and predict the Ravens' opening 53-man roster for a chance to win a Lamar Jackson autographed jersey. Make sure your picks are in by September 4th at BaltimoreRavens.com/YouPickTheTeam. And we want to hear from you, and we've started to hear from you throughout the show on Facebook in the comments section, and we'll get to your questions here as we approach some more of these individual drills. So as Garrett joined the show for the first time, who is your pick for Rookie of the Year, Garrett Downing?
I think it's Patrick Queen. I'm going to go with the low-hanging fruit here. I'm going to take the first rounder. He has played really well. I saw him. It was kind of cool watching him take the field here for the first time and getting to see M&T Bank Stadium. He's going to be playing in the middle of this defense for a long time and bringing a lot of cheers to this place. It was pretty cool to see him take the field for the first time a few minutes ago. And I just think that there's really high expectations for him. Head coach John Harbaugh talked earlier this week about how he's doing even better than expected in terms of picking up the defense, making those adjustments, learning the mental side of the game and playing fast. I mean, that's a challenge, I think, for a rookie when you have to come in and be a guy in the middle of the defense, kind of that anchor right there in the center, and you got to play fast, and you got to be able to communicate with everybody. That's a lot on a young player's plate, and I think that he's played at a really high level in practice, and everybody has been impressed by him. So, low-hanging fruit, first-round pick. I'm going with Patrick Queen.
All right, so hold on. I'm going to challenge you, Mink. If you had to go away from Queen, because I think based off of our conversations the first few days, that's probably where you'd lean as well, but who's somebody else outside of that?
I'll take the second-round pick then. I'll take J.K. Dobbins. J.K.'s look fantastic. I mean, explosive. I love the story that Matt Weiss, the running backs coach, told about J.K. Dobbins yesterday. And so Matt heard that J.K. was talking smack in the weight room. He was talking trash to everybody, including the coaches. And so Matt Weiss says to J.K., what are you doing? Why are you talking smack in there? And he says, look, I want everybody to be paying attention to me. I want them to hear me, and that's going to make them even make that workout even harder for me. And all that attention, all that's going to make me better. It's going to make them better because they have to be on their game. And that just, high tide raises all ships. So I thought that was an interesting story.
I think you got that metaphor right.
I think that's right.
It is a good story, and it's what I've heard you do in the weight room, but I don't know where the results are over the course of your time there at the building. A look at the D-line. We've talked about them from the vets and the new additions in Wolf and Campbell, and then some of the young guys that are going to add a layer of impact as well. And then, as we touched on, too, these position coaches, Joe Cullen leads this group, and guys, and Garrett, I'll get to you first here. As somebody who's been close to the field, you can't miss out on Joe.
Yeah, you definitely can't miss out on Joe Cullen. You hear him all over the field. We're talking about rookies. We talked about Patrick Queen. We talked about J.K. Dobbins. How about Justin Madubuike, third-round pick? He is somebody who I think I've been impressed with. And I think it's been really cool to see Calais Campbell really take him under his wing. Whenever you look out here at practice and you see Justin Madubuike, there's a pretty good chance that Calais Campbell is going to be right there next to him in his ear, coaching him, encouraging him. You saw that in the Wired piece when we had Calais Campbell mic'd up at practice. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch that, and you can see how he's constantly coaching a young guy like Madubuike. And in a practice, in those practices, Madubuike was kind of challenged by Calais, and then he blew up a play, just kind of blew up the offensive line, got to the running back in the backfield. So that was a really encouraging sign for him. He's a big, physical guy. I really like Madubuike. He's not going to put up numbers in the sense of J.K. Dobbins or Patrick Queen, but he's going to be an important rotational player on this defensive line, and I think the Ravens are really encouraged by what they've seen from him early on.
Justin Madubuike's thighs are as big as your waist, Garrett. Oh, my goodness.
Is that a compliment for him or an insult to Matt? I don't know how to take that.
That's a compliment to him. Your waist is getting a little bit bigger these days, so you might have him. But I can't help but see that 92 and think of Haloti Ngata, man. Yeah. I mean, he's not as big as Haloti, and that's a huge comparison to make. He's not even close there.
Some jerseys to fill there.
But still, I mean, if Justin Madubuike can turn out to, the Ravens have a lot of high expectations for this kid. If he can become a player, it'll be interesting to see him fulfill that number 92.
And then just real quick on Madubuike, one more thing. I had a chance to talk with him and his parents last week. He's just an incredibly nice kid. He comes from a great family. If you remember on draft weekend, I mean, he was highly, highly emotional when the Ravens selected him, tears pouring down his face. So he's motivated. I mean, he wants to do great, and you can sense that in talking with him and talking with his parents as well. So he's a great kid, and I think he's going to be a really good player for the Ravens.
Great infrastructure around him with, as you mentioned, Calais Campbell and some of the other vets across that D-line. Let's stick with this rookie conversation, but now on the offensive line as they work through some footwork drills here. Tyre Phillips, the third-rounder out of Mississippi State. What have been the returns early for Phillips?
Yeah, I think it's been good. What's his nickname? Big Country? What is it?
Big Country. Big Country.
Big Country. And he fulfills that. So, I mean, I think Tyre Phillips is he's a more of a raw prospect. He went the JUCO route, came up through the Last Chance U, whatever that college is.
Yeah.
And he took the same path as Za'Darius and all those other guys. Ravens have had a lot of success finding players out of there. And so Tyre Phillips comes in, and I think that, he's not going to be thrust into a starting position right away. That's not my expectation. But he could be a very valuable backup because he can play tackle. That's what he did last year at Mississippi State. And he can also obviously kick in the guard. That's kind of the projection for him right now because he didn't play guard before. That's really what he's working on in training camp, and I think the early returns are good. I mean, he's a big dude who can be really physical in the trenches.
You know who he reminds me of physically, and he's got this is another big comparison, but it's Kelechi Osemele. Second-round pick for the Ravens back in 2012, and he was a guy who played tackle in college, kicked inside a guard, and was a terrific guard when he was with the Ravens and throughout his career. So he reminds me a little bit of that. Kelechi was, I think, more polished right away, and that transition was pretty quick for him. But I think that Tyre Phillips has similar qualities there, and he'll get an opportunity here over the course of training camp to kind of prove himself. One thing that I think is disappointing for a guy like Tyre Phillips, for example, is that preseason would have been so valuable for him. Like, you would love to see how he does in a game atmosphere and gets to go out there and play 60 snaps. You don't get that, and so it's just tough to go out and get put into a starting role right away. But I think that he has a lot of potential.
And guys, as we mentioned, we are going to hear from the fans over the course of this show, and it's not just questions, it can be a comment or thought as well. And this one fits in now that we're in the stadium. This is from Kevin, 16-0 this year, baby. 3 weeks away from week one. Kevin, we love the enthusiasm, but hey, man, don't get ahead of yourself too quickly. But it does allow us, fellas, to talk about what this season it could look like in terms of what the goals are. Yeah, 16-0 is obviously the goal. You don't want to lose any games if you're a team in this league. But 3 weeks away from week one, last year was such a historic season on a statistical front and a record front, but not necessarily the case when it comes to the eventual result. So as you've allowed your mind to wander to week one and maybe the first quarter of the season, is that where you go? Is it strictly the record? Is it the numbers? What are you going to be following to know that this team is not necessarily just as good as last year, but maybe better? Garrett, we'll start with you.
One thing that's a challenge, because what you're talking about is basically they were so good in the regular season, and then they have to, win in the postseason. They got to win the playoffs, and so a challenge is you can't win in the playoffs in September or August. You got to get there. Yep. That's got to happen in January, and so to pass that test, I don't think that we'll know until they're in that position again. I mean, the Ravens could not have looked any better than they did in the regular season last year when they rattled off 14 wins. So I think that that'll be that they won't be able to answer that question until they're actually in that scenario. But what I'll be interested to see in terms of performance is how does Lamar Jackson handle early in the season all of these expectations. Last year the question going into the season was, could he be the franchise guy, right? Well, he answered that clearly. He's the MVP. Now the expectation is, well, what could he do as an encore? Can he live up to those expectations? And so he's passed every single test, so I'm not doubting him by any means, but I'll be really curious to see how he plays early in the year when all the attention here in Baltimore and around the league is certainly going to be on him.
I don't think he's going to be any different. I don't think attention phases Lamar Jackson.
You think MVP again? Back-to-back MVPs?
I mean, why not? I just don't think that attention phases him at all. But I think that if we're talking about the conversation of, expectations in playoffs, those fall on his shoulders primarily. He's done everything he could possibly do, wins MVP, but he's 0-2 in the playoffs. And that the shame of it is, no matter what Lamar Jackson does in the regular season for an encore, and everybody will be celebrating and we'll all be drooling over his highlights on SportsCenter every time he plays. But until he gets to the playoffs, there's going to be that lingering question of, can he get over the hump? And, James Urban, the Ravens quarterbacks coach, talked about it yesterday and said, Lamar Jackson, he said, I don't want to say that he's obsessed with winning the Super Bowl, but he's obsessed with winning the Super Bowl. Lamar talks about it all the time. Every time you talk to him, have an interview with him, it's, I got one goal, it's win the Super Bowl. And that rubs off on his teammates. They all notice it, and I think it's what is so endearing about Lamar is it's a one-track mind, man. He doesn't care about all the attention. He doesn't care about the MVP. He probably has his Heisman trophy in a box. I don't want to know where he put the MVP trophy.
Probably sitting in a box in his garage somewhere.
Seriously, that's on some shelf collecting dust way up high. You can't even see it probably. So, he just cares about getting that ring.
And I would say in terms of a checklist, from my perspective, it would be how do you start the season? And last year, somewhat lost in it because the back three quarters were so good. It's a 2-2 start, and they had to make some adjustments on the fly. They did, and it had great returns heading into the postseason. So how do you start the season? And then offensively, there's the Lamar layer to this, and defenses are going to have more tape, and they're going to be more focused on all the things he does well. But I don't think we've talked enough about the amount of time that Greg Roman has had with his staff and with this offense that retains so much continuity to add different layers. They're not going to abandon what they've done, and I think it's Greg in the back corner of the screen there, but there are going to be new aspects to this offense, and that to me is exciting. If you're a fan of football or a fan of this team, is how does this offense look different in 2020? Because you do have to continue to adapt in this league year in and year out.
Well, I think the passing game will be better, and that's partly because Lamar Jackson's only entering his third year, so he's getting better as a player and specifically as a passer. And I think his targets around him, Hollywood Brown, we've talked about it countless times already, Miles Boykin. I'm really intrigued by these two rookie wide receivers, Devin Duvernay and James Prochet. So I think
Don't forget about Mark Andrews, Ryan Mink. We've only been showing him here for about 45 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Those two just pick up where you left off, and I'm happy with that connection. I think that with improved talent around them, and Lamar just progressing naturally as any quarterback in their third year would, and because of his work ethic specifically, the passing game will take another step forward.
Yeah, and I go back to what I said at the start, where I've been impressed with where it is at this stage, because it wouldn't surprise me if it was kind of slow to get starting in camp, but that hasn't been the case. They've been hitting deep balls, so I've been really encouraged by the passing game. I also will be curious to see, how much Lamar's running early in the season. That's something that they never want to take away from him. It's just a unique ability that he's better with the ball in his hands than any player in the National Football League, in my opinion. So you never want to take that away from him. But he's talked about the fact that he wants to run less. So early in the year, what is that number? What is that balance? That'll be something I'll be keeping an eye on as well.
He's still been taking off in practice.
Yeah, exactly.
When it's not open, it's not like Lamar's just been in the pocket in practice. He takes off with some regularity. So the question is, Garrett, can he break his own record?
I don't think he will break his. Well, he could. I think he could, but I don't think that's what. I think that I do not think that he will. I think that he'll be. It was 1,200 last year. I think that he'll be over 1,000 again, but I do not think that he will break his own record because I think that more of those yards will come in the passing category this season.
He said he wants to break long ones. He said, and he only did it in 15 games last year.
So you're saying yes?
I'm not saying yes. I'm just throwing out those qualifiers.
Well, this is a point that I've made, and it goes hand in hand with the discussion we had earlier about the running back group as a whole. To me, numbers don't need to be the guide as to whether or not Lamar Jackson or this offense are equal to what they were in 2019. It's more about command of the offense, an understanding of what opposing defenses are doing to try and stop you. And then, as we mentioned, there's 4 really talented backs now, along with just Mark Ingram being there as your primary running back, that you would think might eat into some of those numbers. But there's no doubt that competitive juice is always going to be flying for Lamar. So when he needs to, he's going to tuck it and go. So as we see here, we've showed a lot of offensive line and the D-line. They're utilizing this stadium practice, guys, to get a lot of work in on special teams. They have the fields out in Owings Mills to do all the special teams work they need, but there's nothing like the in-stadium environment to get sight lines and some of the, just basically timing and positioning right that you'll see on a Sunday, a Thursday, or a Monday night. So I think that that's something worth noting, that special teams is getting a lot of work in here.
Well, Evan, I think it's important noting because returner is a question that
Good
obviously,
point.
The Ravens are trying to figure out who their returners are going to be. And so you get young guys out here, get James Prochet out here, and see how he handles catching punts in this atmosphere when you've got, the LED ribbons on and you have the stadium atmosphere. I think this is a really important time for the returners on this team. And that's something the Ravens often talk about in the preseason. They like to see those guys in a stadium, in a game atmosphere. And so this is the best way to simulate that. And I think that's, that is an undetermined position right now for the Ravens, and Prochet's got probably the leg up on it. It's his job to win. He's got to go earn it, but I think that this is a good opportunity for him to get out here in this environment and see how he handles, and based on what I've seen so far, he's going out here and fielding a punt right now. Caught it cleanly, looked pretty good doing it, and I've been impressed with him. I think I like him as a returner. He did it in college. The Ravens liked him as a returner at the Senior Bowl, and from what I've seen from him here today, and from him over the course of training camp, I think he's going to be in pretty good position to earn that punt return job.
That's a great point, Garrett and Ryan. As we look here at Pernell McPhee and Jihad Ward, I mean, these guys aren't involved in the special teams work that's happening on the field. And look, we can't show you that right now. That's why we're focused on these guys on the sideline. But we touched on Tyus Bowser. Ward and McPhee are also going to be part of that edge rush that they're going to need alongside Judon.
Yeah, I really like Pernell McPhee, man. He's one of my favorite guys.
Oh, he's
not
just a great dude.
Oh, not just because he says, I'm a no. Let me off the chain. Let me hook. Which I do love that. But, he's just a great mentor for these young guys. I mean, Jalen Ferguson specifically. I mean, he talked to Garrett and I on the Lounge podcast, and he said he wants to win a Super Bowl for Pernell, not for himself. He wants to get a ring for Pernell. That's what kind of mentor he's been to him early in his career. And I think just Pernell McPhee has some more juice left. We haven't seen the last of Pernell McPhee. He was off to a hot start last year before the triceps injury, and he can do it again. Jihad Ward, like you mentioned, another underrated, not talked about enough, just a gritty player.
And guys, as we heard the horn there, and different timing today, but it means we just get to talk some more because we're going to be on here for a little bit longer. They've just moved into individual drills, and this isn't a drill. This is called getting water, but it is the defensive backs and specifically some of those safeties as we now shift to the D-line. But we will get back to the safety discussion. We hit it off the top of the show, and Deshaun Elliott thrust higher up on the depth chart, and it's a point that is going to be really focused on over the next few weeks here as they look to fill a void. And the thought is that they have somebody in Elliott who's, when healthy, a guy who's shown the capability to do so.
Yeah, go ahead, Garrett. I'll let you jump in on that. I talked about Deshaun already.
Yeah, I think Deshaun Elliott's a really good player. The Ravens have been really encouraged by him over the past 2 seasons. His teammates love him. I think the question for him, obviously, is his ability to stay healthy. He's got to stay healthy. But when he's been out there, he's flashed and he's shown. I think he's got good ball skills. I think he moves really well. I think he sees the field well. I think he's got some leadership to him. He's very vocal on the back end there, which is important for a safety. So
he's the Joker.
He's got a great nickname. He's got some great thigh pads. If you check out his thigh pads, there
it is.
Guys out, thighs out, huh?
Custom thigh pads for the Joker. So all that's working for him. And,
there you go. Cody's
I
on cue. Show us the joke. Cody, you ask and you shall receive, my friend. Is there any backstory? As you guys know every angle of an inch of this team to why he's nicknamed the Joker?
I think he just really likes the Joker. He
Like
kinda
the movie or like the character?
Yeah, the character. Yeah,
Gotcha.
the Batman character.
I still haven't seen the new one. I hear it's disturbing.
Yeah, it is a little dark. It is a little dark. But I think teammates at Texas gave him that nickname, and just like, I don't know, just kind of a, I don't know how to describe. I don't want to say like a bad dude, but he's got a little edge to him, I guess.
Well, that's what you need in this game. Hey, Garrett Downing, you've got another job, head of social media for the Ravens, so we're going to let you go do that. Also, maybe grab some water and a towel. Good to be back with you, my friend. You're going to be joining us over the next couple weeks here on Training Camp Live, but hope all is well.
Yeah, I said I got to go shoot practice. In reality, I'm going to go try to find a shower here somewhere and cool off. So, all right, guys, thank you.
Here we go. Where's Geno Stone? Gary
Stone.
I don't know. Maybe a long-lost relative. But there is Geno Stone. We saw that he made the top plays a couple days ago for an interception. Just a playmaker, a late-round pick that, again, now will get more opportunity. That's so much of what this league is, Ryan, is that when a player goes down due to injury or a team decides to move on and you're thrust into a chance here over the next couple weeks to probably race up the depth chart quicker than you may have thought. Are you ready for it?
Absolutely. I mean, we looked at Geno Stone as a 7th-round pick out of Iowa and said, well, special teams only probably for you, considering who the Ravens have at safety. Oh, Marcus Peters throwing the ball. He's running the drill. But I think that now Geno Stone is a valuable backup safety for this team. And here's a real heady player, very instinctual player for the Ravens or in college, and we're going to see that at the NFL level. It's tough to transition at the NFL level at safety because there's just a lot of things going on, a lot of checks. Offenses are more complex, all that. So Geno Stone's still catching up, but he has some good mentors in front of him. I think one guy, Anthony Levine, very versatile player for the Ravens. Now look at Jimmy Smith. They've talked about him maybe playing a little bit more safety, which is what we saw Brandon Carr do last year as a cornerback. Can Jimmy factor into that safety competition and formula a little bit? I don't. Here's a good question from Don Avery. Will Jimmy Smith move to free safety? I don't expect that to happen. I do think a little bit too much has been made among media and fans about Jimmy Smith playing safety. Like, we're not talking about a true safety.
And I would say this, Ryan, in last year provided a good blueprint on this, that Don Wink Martindale is one of those coordinators who doesn't necessarily follow all conventional wisdom on where players are playing and they're set in a certain position. I mean, we saw 6 defensive backs out on the field in a lot of scenarios. So, well, yes, they're going to have to replace a player and a player that was impactful at times. This is not a case where it's going to be one man slides in and the problem is solved or this is what it looks like. It's going to be multifaceted, and if nothing else, the dimension of this group allows them to do that, and they have a free thinker in the leadership position there in Wink.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I still think that Deshaun Elliott, is in position to take the lion's share of those snaps because you usually don't rotate your free safety a ton. But they could do that, and they're very versatile, like you talked about. I just think that Jimmy Smith is still a cornerback at his core, and he's a guy who, Wink Martindale talked about how the NFL has become like the NBA. It's about matchups. Jimmy Smith is a tough matchup because he's a big dude. He can match up against taller, bigger players like Travis Kelce's of the world, those kind of tight ends, and he's fast enough to run with bigger wide receivers too, like A.J. Green. So I think that Jimmy Smith can play a variety of roles for you.
This is a fun drill to keep on here. This is we're playing some football here. Wow, L.J. Ford throwing Mark Ingram to the turf. This is kind of a different hybrid version of kind of an old school tackling drill.
Keep it
Making
here.
place in space here. Yeah, tune in. Queen and Dobbins meeting at the line. Dobbins fighting through.
Looked like Dobbins was going to get by. Kind of did.
I mean, we don't know the exact metrics to this one, but that one looks like it went to the rookie out of Ohio State. We got Gus Edwards here. Big man.
There goes the helmet.
Chris Board loses his lid. This is, look, no preseason games. You still got to figure out a way to practice tackling, so it will be sprinkled in, and we're getting to see it here on the stadium grass.
I think you're going to see Mark Ingram take this rep here. He says, after I get slammed, you're not doing that again. Take that next rep a little harder.
That's year 11 throwing himself, and I think that's John Harbaugh. It's tough to follow at the mask, but I think Harbs is right there in the heart of this drill. It's so fun to see these coaches when they get into some of the real meat and potatoes of football, keeping an eye close. What a juke. Nice. The big man showing some of that sidestep.
Did you see that J.K. Dobbins juke, though? Oh, my goodness gracious. That was a nice move. You see that explosiveness. He's got moves on moves on moves out there.
And we got our wideouts, our pass catchers. James
you don't see that much.
Loses one. That was a fastball coming at you. It is a humid day here in Baltimore, Maryland. Feeling more like August the last few days.
Yeah, this is a good drill too here. I like that they're mixing up. We haven't seen these drills yet in training camp, so the Ravens are kind of these coaches are breaking out some new stuff. James Prochet, he's going to be kicking himself because he hardly dropped the ball at SMU. So he and Duvernay, they're gonna be sure-handed guys for the Ravens. You know, it's probably a little bit different too, seeing this ball in the stadium.
That's a great point. That's exactly where I was going to go. I mean, while it is the same field, and you could do the whole Hoosiers and measure it, and it's the same. It has a much different look. Sight lines are different. You've got the stands in the background. Depth can feel different. It just feels bigger, and they're having some trouble connecting on some of these. As we look at the depth chart here, Willie Snead, so sort of consistent and someone you can look to provide consistent catching, but also blocking in the run game. Marquise Brown, I think we've really, for good reason, spent a lot of time on. And then Miles Boykin and Duvernay and Prochet there. And that, to me, as we've said, is really going to be fun to see play out over the next few weeks here. Those three kind of playing it out for maybe that third spot.
I think Willie Snead is a guy who deserves some time. He's looked really good as a receiver, and we all know what Willie Snead can do as a blocker. He's one of the best blocking wide receivers in the NFL and was underappreciated by fans, at least, part of why the Ravens broke the team rushing record last year. Willie Snead is good as a blocker, but he's dropped some weight this offseason, and I think he has looked a little faster, a little bit quicker, and he's made some big plays. We've seen what he does with his hands. I mean, just reliable, like you're saying. He can move the chains, but if he can add more of a big play dimension, you know, don't forget about Willie Snead because you have all these new exciting young toys. He can be a difference maker. Jaleel Scott's another player we should talk about too, especially given the injuries to Chris Moore and Antoine Wesley, who are battling for that 6 wide receiver spot. Jaleel is a primary candidate for that. John Harbaugh said he thinks he has a really good chance of making this roster. And the biggest thing for him was special teams because he wasn't, you know, just look at him, 6'5", 210. That's not what you usually think of from a special teams player, and I don't think he played a whole lot in college. You know, he was a red zone threat, just a big body, big play wide receiver in college. But now he's become a very good special teams player, Coach Harbaugh said. So, you know, if he can continue to prove himself that way, and he made a couple of plays yesterday in practice. One, a leaping, juggling catch with Geno Stone bearing down on him. If Jaleel Scott continues to play like that, he could find his way on this team.
He made his way on this team last year via the preseason. Players will not have that luxury this year, but Jaleel Scott has put enough on tape for these coaches to know what they're going to get. And we head back to the running backs, and J.K. Dobbins with a gorgeous catch over the shoulder there and making a play in the end zone and letting everyone, if anyone's around, know about it. As we've touched on, he's fit right into what is a pro atmosphere with his intensity. And we head back to Facebook for some questions and comments. J.K. going to put on a show this year. Well, he's put on a show early in camp, Ryan, and you have to imagine he will get every opportunity to be part of the show here in 2020.
For sure, it's a J.K. Dobbins show today at M&T Bank Stadium. This kid, he's got it, man. He's got it. Some players, you just look at him as a rookie. Oh, no, here's a marquee matchup. That's not Harbs, is it?
No, that's not Harbs.
Okay, I was going to say.
We might have, at one of the points of this show, I should note this is Ryan Mink's last show of Training Camp Live season 2020. So, but at some point, we might have to guess that coach because it's tough to find him via the mask. But we're glad everybody's being safe out there.
Yeah. Back to these rookies and J.K. Dobbins. I mean, you can just kind of tell when somebody has it. And J.K. Dobbins oozes that. I mean, his personality, the story I told earlier about talking trash, the confidence, obviously what you see on the field from a playmaking standpoint.
Well, and let's be real, too, Mink. I mean, he's coming from a program in Ohio State, and while I always appreciate, and the Ravens have proven this, that you can find talent anywhere, there is a benefit to playing at some of these top-tier programs because there's certain aspects to the transition that aren't as daunting as they might be if you're coming from a Grand Valley State, where we saw Matthew Judon come in and make an impact. But I'm sure there were moments where this felt pretty big.
Oh, I think even Judon, as confident as he is, would tell you that as a rookie. And he has told me that he was kind of looking around like, how am I supposed to act? You know, I see Terrell Suggs acting that way, and I kind of want to act that way, but I'm not sure if I should act that way. and J.K. Dobbins, though, is just kind of letting it all out. You know, he's letting it hang out and being himself, and I like it, man. I like the kid.
No, he's been a joy to watch. And, hey, Mink, you've been a joy to work with over the last few days here. Cliff Brown, I think, will be stepping in tomorrow, and then we'll maybe circle back down the road. But great perspective, and it's been a lot of fun. And that will do it for us here on Training Camp Live, presented by Xfinity on a Sunday. Took you past the hour, and why not? We're in the stadium, so let's keep it rolling. But stay tuned after practice. As always, live press conferences about 4:20 p.m. Eastern. John Harbaugh, defensive line coach Joe Cullen, pass defense coordinator Chris Hewitt, and linebacker coach Mike McDonald also at the podium. So enjoy that. Enjoy some top plays from today's practice, and we'll be back in Owings Mills, 9 a.m. tomorrow for another edition of Training Camp Live, presented by Xfinity. Have a great Sunday, everybody.